Hello, everyone, and welcome to Think Yourself Healthy podcast. I'm your host, Heather Duranja. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everybody. On today's episode of Think Yourself Healthy, I have special guest Anne-Marie Bonneau. She is a cookbook author, speaker, blogger, fermenter, and sourdough baker. Anne-Marie went plastic-free in 2011 after learning about plastic's devastating impacts on our oceans and their inhabitants. She shows others how reducing their trash not only benefits the planet, but also satisfies their taste buds, improves their well-being, and boosts their bank account. Wow, what a fabulous bio, Anne. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks, Heather. Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about you and what happened in 2011 that kind of really woke you up to the, issues that we have here in, in the United States and then just really worldwide.
Yeah. Well, I started reading about plastic pollution in the oceans, and I had no idea that plastic was going in the ocean. I thought the things I put in the recycling bin got made into new things. And, I knew plastic was bad, but I thought, well, it's being recycled. We've all been kind of duped.
So how did you discover you were being duped?
Well, I guess the first thing that happened was I read about this catamaran that these environmentalists built, and they sailed it from San Francisco, just north of me, to Sydney, Australia. They built it out of waste materials, including 12,500 plastic bottles.
Wow.
So those were the flotation devices, I guess. So they did that to raise awareness about plastic pollution.
Wow.
And so that caught my attention, and I started reading about it, and I was horrified. Like everybody is horrified. Back then there wasn't, I think it was just starting to come to light. I don't think there was a lot of attention, or at least I hadn't read anything about it. So I read that, and I told my daughter, my older daughter, she was 16 at the time, I said, we have to get off of plastic. This is terrible. I don't want to play a part in this. As long as I'm alive, I will, because there are things in the supply chain that I don't see, so, but I can cut what I can. And so that's how it started. And then I kind of noticed all the waste. Most of it is plastic. I mean, if you just focus on plastic, you're going to cut so much waste. But food waste is also a huge problem. So I learned a few years after that, a couple of years after that, that up to 40% of the food produced in the US goes uneaten. I think that number has improved a little bit, but it's still, high 30s. So it's crazy.
Absolutely. I myself, and I want to say it was either 2007 or 2008, I wrote an entire research project on food waste in the United States and how we could solve world hunger with just what we throw away in the US. Wow. And I think, it's really frightening and alarming to consider, but for me, when I did this research project, one of the things that really shocked me was that the reason we have so much food waste is due to the fear of being sued. And this is why a lot of the companies, grocery stores and bakeries and whatnot, they have locks on their dumpsters that are just literally loaded with food, uneaten food that is on, the verge of going. And that was really frightening to me. Like, wow, what a sick problem.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely absurd. Meanwhile, I think at the end of 2020, something like 49 million Americans experienced food insecurity in 2020.
Yeah. It's really sad. It's devastating. It's really a shame to, I, I've had a lot of fun doing all kinds of different research projects in schools. I did a whole food waste project in elementary school and
Oh, wow.
literally collected, well, it was hundreds of pounds of food waste. And it was just, there's just so much goes into the trash can. It's just insane. It is insane. So tell me how you ended up becoming the zero food waste cook. How did this happen?
Well, so I'm a big foodie, and so are my kids. Um, when we decided to go plastic free, my older daughter did a plastic waste audit for several weeks. I think 16 weeks or something crazy like that. She was really into it, and now she works in waste management.
Okay.
So she did this waste audit, and every week she would take a picture of all the plastic we had accumulated for the week. And then we could see, oh, look, we're throwing out this, this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And we realized, oh, it's all coming from the kitchen, most of it. And even if you're a huge minimalist who can fit your 12 belongings in your backpack, you still have to eat.
Right.
So, yeah, so food seemed like the best place to start. Because that's where and we weren't buying a lot of highly processed food, but we still bought a few things and a few packaged things, and we just started making more things from scratch. So then Mary Catherine, she was 16, started her blog back then, The Plastic Free Chef. And then when she went away to school in Canada, we're Canadian, she found it really hard to keep up in university. So I said to her, well, can I take over? Because I loved her blog. It was great. People loved it. And she said, no, start your own blog. So I started mine, and I thought of different names. And actually, the one I toyed with was Lost Knowledge. Because, we have forgotten to do all of these things that our grandparents or great grandparents knew how to do. And there are many complex reasons for that. But anyway, so I toyed with that, and then I thought, well, why don't I just do zero waste chef? Because it's going to be food. So that's how it came about.
I love it. And you are so right. It's kind of crazy to think about how just a matter of 5, 6, 7 decades, we have completely lost our way in touch with what our ancestors did in order to preserve and sustain Earth, as well as, human existence. So in your opinion, where do you feel things kind of started to go downhill? Where did the shift happen where we just started consuming in such excess and just everything became so, we can just discard anything anymore. People,
Yeah.
you pick up I'll just go get a new iPhone. It's like, well, what? So
yeah.
what's your take on it?
Let's see. Well, I think throwaway culture started around the 50s. There's that photo in Life magazine of a housewife throwing all of these single-use items up into the air with a huge smile on her face, and it was going to be so wonderful. And now we look back at that and just shudder.
Yeah.
So I think in the 50s it really took off, and then I believe it was in the late 50s. I'd have to look it up, but there was a bottle bill in Vermont to make the canning companies, the bottlers, refill their bottles. And it was going to cost these businesses a lot of money. So they got together and they killed it. They killed the bottle bill, and they formed a group that is now called today, Keep America Beautiful.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. So they had the Crying Indian ad in the 70s, and it was all to push the onus of cleanup onto consumers. So they came up with the term litter bug, and they had all these ads on TV and everywhere blaming people for litter.
Wow.
Look at the mess you're making, just so that they could shirk responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just gotten worse and worse.
Yeah. It's
Each decade, it's crazy. But I think that's where it started. And, it's complicated. Like, the stuff does make life very convenient,
mm-hmm.
but a lot of the food that is packaged in all this plastic it's not real food.
No.
Right? It's this Western diet, now global, that's making people sick. Also,
Right.
a few people at the top can rake in record profits. It's the whole food system.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think plastic makes our modern food system possible
Mm-hmm.
to a big degree, because how else would you ship highly processed food like stuff all over the place, and shelf stable? And
Right.
anyway, I forget your question. I'm like,
You're doing a fabulous job.
Ranty tangent.
No, you're doing a fabulous job, describing where it all went wrong. And I agree with you. Big food really has created a very broken system that has destroyed the health and well-being of the family unit in so many ways. And people don't seem to really recognize what a catastrophe we are really in, and that we're going to have to make some really massive shifts in our consuming ways very, very soon. I mean, in my opinion, it's already, quite past when we should have gotten started with doing things differently, because it's coming at the expense of our health and well-being and the planet's health and well-being.
Oh yeah. Well, the food systems is just a complete mess.
Well, it amazes me. I have conversations with people all the time, and I am very much against refined processed foods. It's dead food. It has no nutrient value. It doesn't contain any water. There's no vitamins and minerals. Everything is removed, the fiber, all of the good things, and then just synthetic chemicals are pumped back into these.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, okay, we've all been through a drive-through, pulled out the French fry, one slips underneath the seat, and then 6 months later, we're rummaging for something, and we pull out that French fry, and it hasn't altered its appearance in any way whatsoever. And, it's frightening to me to think, okay, well, if this stuff isn't degrading underneath the seat, exposed to oxygen, what do you think's happening inside our body? And then you take all of the chemicals that these foods are wrapped up in the plastic that's used. My husband is from Italy, and he really brought a lot of awareness to me around, everything is in a package, the lettuce is in a package, everything is in plastic. And he's like, it's all cancerous, when these foods are sitting in these highly toxic plastic bags and they're being exposed from different climate to different climate, what do you think is happening? They're leaching into the food, and then we're consuming it. And it's frightening. It's like, oh, wow, that's something to really think about.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, we're consuming also the little microplastics.
Mm-hmm.
A credit card's worth a week.
I know.
For the average person.
Isn't that crazy? It's just so crazy. And we wonder why disease is so prevalent. So how do we start changing this? How, for the person listening right now who maybe has never given it much thought in terms of what their contribution to the waste in the world looks like, how do they bring awareness to themselves around what they're consuming and waste actually looks like? How do they get started?
Well, first of all, start by knowing it's not your fault. We didn't create this crazy system that we're all born into. So, don't feel guilty. you did not create this supply chain.
Yeah.
So,
Great advice.
yeah. I mean, it's, it's all the big corporations that have done this.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you want to get started, I would say start with food, because you have to eat, and chances are a lot of the waste is coming from your kitchen. And also, there's no downside to reducing food waste.
Mm-hmm.
There really is none.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
You'll save money, you'll shop less often, because you're going to eat all the food you have.
Mm-hmm.
The average American family of 4 throws away about $1,800 worth of food every year. So it's a huge amount of money. So if you start with food waste, you'll also cut down on packaging waste. Mm-hmm. Because if you eat, if you have a loaf of bread and you eat the whole thing, then you won't go and buy a loaf of bread when you still have half a loaf left. Mm-hmm. in a plastic bag. So you'll bring less food, less plastic into your home. What I always tell people to do is shop your kitchen first. So before you go grocery shopping, look at what you have on hand, and then let that determine what you're going to cook next. Mm-hmm. And if you do that regularly, you'll save a fortune. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what to make, you can always make soup. Absolutely. I mean, if you have an onion and water and a couple of other random ingredients, you can make a pot of soup.
Absolutely. So then let me ask you this question, because as a dietitian, here's one of the barriers that I see quite prevalent amongst individuals. They were not taught how to cook. No one in their home modeled. Grandma, mom, they were too busy with their full-time jobs, working 10 to 12-hour days. And so families became very dependent upon fast food and boxes of cereal and pastry strudels and cans of soup and hamburger helper and all of these, quick, convenient type of food items. So for me, when I recommend or suggest to someone that they should start self-preparing their own meals, they look at me with this fear-based, expression of, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know how to cook. No one showed me. So there's a lot of intimidation and insecurity about getting into the kitchen. Many don't even possess the basic skills of how to peel and slice something. So what kind of advice do you have for the listeners whom have maybe never once prepared a single item for themselves and have only been dependent on getting their things through the fast food and convenience food market? Where do they start? How do we ease this intimidation?
Wow. Yeah, that's really hard.
Right?
Yeah. I think a lot of cooking shows and cooking competitions do a real disservice to people.
Yeah.
Because they look at that and they think, oh, that's what cooking is. Mm-hmm. They think, but it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something simple.
Absolutely.
Fresh, simple ingredients. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to look like what you see on TV and on blogs, and it doesn't matter. It's fine.
You mean all of this stuff out there isn't like our Instagram profile? Come on. Are you kidding me?
Well, when I worked on my cookbook, I had a fabulous photographer, and she tried to keep it simple and approachable. And, my pictures aren't like food porn. Mm-hmm. I think they're just nice pictures. You look at them and you go, oh yeah, I could make that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what she was going for. I think she did a great job. But the night she sent this one group of photos, I had made one recipe for dinner. And I showed my daughter, and we looked at my pot of food and we just started laughing. Hers looked so much better. I mean, it tasted delicious.
Yeah.
But Yeah, it's really crazy. Everything has a beauty standard attached to it. Even our meals.
Yeah, I
It's it's also
agree.
it's also that, it's all to make us feel bad and keep consuming.
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
you're content, you're it's harder to sell a content person more stuff.
Absolutely.
So make them feel insecure. So yeah, I would say just start with something really simple, and
Yeah.
maybe just try one meal a day.
Hmm.
Maybe it will just be breakfast.
Yeah.
Try to make yourself a breakfast that doesn't come out of a box.
Hmm. Yeah, those are great tips. And those are some of the things that I encourage individuals to start with. Maybe it's just starting with like some sort of breakfast smoothie where you're actually incorporating some fresh vegetables and fruits, maybe some nut milk, some plant-based protein, or maybe something like, yogurt or something, where it's not a whole lot of tools needed. You can throw it all into one blender and push the blend button. And then after doing this, for a few days, it starts to get easier and easier. And in my opinion, I think it's all about consistency. You have to really get in there and let go of the expectation for this perfectly curated, final product. That's just not realistic. I had a client send me a picture of some coconut pancakes that she attempted to make, and she can't do eggs, so we're substituting ground flax and water to try and be the binder to hold it together, and it looked like a big pile of poop. I was like, and she was so funny because she was like, well, in terms of texture, it was pretty mushy. It didn't look, I mean, it literally looked like a big old blob of poop. But she said the flavor was amazing. And I said, that's all that
Mm.
matters. It's
Yep.
all. And as you keep attempting to make those pancakes, you will find that they will get easier to make, and they eventually
Yeah.
will, you know.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And also, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can try and make it fun, like I find what I described before, how you shop the fridge first,
Mm-hmm.
it turns it into a game because you think, oh, what can I make with what I find in here? And then you come up with really, really delicious meals.
Yeah.
And it's very satisfying to cook that way.
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned this because this morning I was looking in the freezer and the refrigerator and I'm like, okay, what do I have? All right, I've got some beef tips, I've got some onion, I've got water, I've got some fresh spices. I'm like, okay, there's enough basics there to get started and create something that will at least be tasty, and I don't have to run out to the grocery store to pick up, one item to complete the meal. I'll do the best I can with what I have available to me. Just like my lunch today. My lunch was a hodgepodge of some lettuce, some lentils, some beets, sunflower seeds, a little goat
Oh,
cheese,
yeah.
some leftover tuna fish. It was a fabulous salad. Took me less than
Oh,
2 minutes
yeah.
to assemble,
That sounds delicious.
yeah.
Yeah, I love making salads like that. I like to always have some cooked beans or
Hmm.
lentils in the refrigerator,
Hmm.
and then I grow sprouts on the counter.
Okay.
So, like having those in there, and I make homemade red wine vinegar.
Ooh.
It's so good. Which, you
Ooh.
don't have to do. If you're intimidated, don't worry about that. Just use a
Right.
lemon.
Right. So
Um,
when you're doing your beans, are you starting with dried beans? Is that how
yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah. Oh, they taste really good. Yeah, dried beans, I soak them overnight, or well, for chickpeas, I'll soak them for maybe 6 hours. That's all they need. And then
Okay.
I put them in my pressure cooker. As
Hmm.
soon as it comes to pressure, they're done. And I
Okay.
turn the heat off. And I usually put I forgot, my husband was complaining this morning. I forgot to put the kombu in. I put a little strip of kombu in for gas. It
Okay.
helps.
Okay.
Yeah. And he said, oh, I think you forgot that this time.
So where do you get the kombu? Where can you find that?
Well, in San Francisco, I can get it in bulk at Rainbow Grocery.
Okay.
but you should be able to get it in, let's see, maybe an Asian grocery store.
Okay.
Whole Foods might have it.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So it's a type of, is it kelp? I think it's a type of kelp.
Okay.
And it helps reduce gas. I don't have a problem with it, and neither does my younger daughter, but anyway, some people do.
Yeah. Well, what I find also is that part of the reason people don't tolerate the legumes, the beans, the lentils as well, and, they tend to get gassy is because they just don't have them frequently enough. And so we can't break down that outer husk of, the bean or the legume. And so when we're not eating these often, we're not producing the enzymes efficiently that are necessary to help assist with breaking them down, fermenting them, letting the microbiome in our gut do their job. And so a lot of times, I just encourage people start with small quantities, have a quarter cup to a half a cup. And then a couple days, 2-3 days, have it again, and another 2 to 3 days, have it again. And what we usually find is that most people tend to tolerate them a lot better when they're consuming them more frequently. But the mistake most people have or make is they have the beans, they get gassy, and they're like, oh, that gave me gas, I can't have them. And so they'll go 6 months, and then they'll try it again, and they'll be like, oh, there's that gas again, can't do it. So in my opinion, I think it's just lack of exposure and efficiency on our digestive systems, and just exposing a little more frequently helps to really take care of that problem.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And digestive bitters can be another great addition after, you've had beans, and you tend to recognize that maybe it creates a little gas for you. Just doing a few drops of digestive bitters can be very beneficial at reducing that bloating and gas as well. Hey guys, I'm going to interrupt this episode for a really brief message and to introduce you to today's amazing podcast sponsors, WaveBlock. If you know me, you know that I am all about reducing toxicity. And to be perfectly honest with you, this whole 5G thing has got me a little freaked out. Did you know that your phone and AirPods emit radiation? According to the CDC, your phone uses radio frequency radiation to transmit its signal. This cloud of radiation just sits outside your brain the entire time you're using your phone or on your AirPods. If you listen to podcasts, talk on your phone, do Zoom calls all day, that exposure really starts to add up. The frequencies from your phone actually pass through your brain, which is really scary and can cause negative effects like headaches, foggy brain, fatigue, and other issues. I love using my WaveBlock EMF protective stickers for my phone and AirPods to direct these harmful frequencies away from my body and my brain. WaveBlock's accredited lab-tested line of products helps significantly reduce the amount of radiation you are getting exposed to with their easy-to-apply EMF blocking stickers. They have protection for AirPods, AirPod Pros, and all of the recent iPhone models. These stickers don't interfere with anything, so you can still use your phone case or whatever it is that you like. They just offer all-day protection. Make sure you head to waveblock.com and take advantage of a 20% discount using the code Heather. I'll make sure to link it in the show notes for easy access. So make sure you head to waveblock.com to get your 20% off discount and use the code Heather.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
great.
tell me what some of your kitchen staples are. What if we were to walk into your kitchen right now and open the pantry? What are the non-negotiables? What are the things there that are the basic necessities you can create a delicious, nutritious meal from any day?
Okay. Well, I have to have beans, dried beans, dried chickpeas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I get low on chickpeas, I get a little nervous. So, and dried lentils.
Do you have a particular favorite dried lentil? Is that you like the yellows, the greens, the browns?
I like green and brown.
Okay.
I like red, and they cook quickly, but I prefer the green.
Okay.
Yeah, they're more sturdy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a personal preference.
I'm with you. Most of the ones I get are the green ones.
Yeah.
I've become I've become pretty obsessed with having lentils. It's pretty much a staple in the house, and either make some quinoa or some rice to go with it. Super quick, easy, very inexpensive, and
Oh
very,
yeah.
healthy, very
Yep.
nutritious protein, plant-based protein that can be added in to help support GI function.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you have some, yeah, just like what you had for lunch, if you have some cooked lentils and cooked grain, and
Hmm.
maybe some roasted beets, I mean, you're all set. You
Yeah.
just assemble that with a few other things, and yeah, it's delicious. It's so
Yes.
healthy.
So you're not using the aluminum canned beans or
No,
lentils.
no. No, 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 no. No, dried. I mean, well, they're really inexpensive.
Hmm.
I can get them at the bulk store. I have them right next to me. I was sewing or
Oh,
anyway.
fabulous.
Yeah, these are my little cloth produce bags. They're just
Okay.
thin. This was an old duvet. Anyway, so I take my cloth bags with me to the bulk
Hmm.
bins and fill them up. Super easy.
How do you
And
store them when you bring them home? How do you store them?
well, I eat so many chickpeas that I have a really big jar. They're for flour, the jars
Yeah.
with the big wide lid. I
Yep.
have some for flour also, but I have one just for chickpeas because
Okay.
I buy so many of them. So
Okay.
usually I just leave them in the cloth bag. I
Okay.
mean, it depends. Sometimes I buy them in glass jars, but usually in cloth bags. Um, so kind of, I guess, half and half. Some are in jars, some are in cloth bags. So yeah, I
Okay.
have to have those. And then I have to have baking supplies. I have to have flour. I have now, if you start down this path, don't feel that you have to do what I'm about to describe. But I have a hand cranked grain mill and an electric grain mill. And so I love grinding up my own flour.
I
It
love.
tastes so good.
Most
It's
people listening are probably like, wait, what? She just said, wait, what?
I
Grinding
don't
her own flour?
yeah, yeah. Well, it's really delicious though. My sourdough starter loves it. I don't use 100% ground flour or like home ground flour in my bread because it will make a super dense loaf.
Okay.
But so I had about the last time I baked bread, I put in about 20% hand
Okay.
milled. So I still buy flour.
Okay.
And don't feel like you have to go out and buy a grain mill. But I do love to have wheat berries on hand, and they taste delicious cooked.
Mhm. So let's talk about wheat berries. I get asked a lot of questions. What do you do with wheat berries? How do you use them in your, recipes? So can you give the listeners some tips on how you use wheat berries?
Well, okay, aside from grinding them up,
Mm-hmm.
you can cook them kind of like you cook rice. I have a recipe in my book with emmer wheat,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of look like rice. I never noticed them at the store in the bulk section until I started all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw them and realized, oh, I can make flour out of those. But yeah, I have a really yummy salad in my book. It has, oh, farro. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Farro is the same thing, or there are three types of farro, I think. But anyway, um, you you cook it and it's this yummy, chewy, kind of nutty grain.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's more to it than rice, but it's about the same size as
Right.
short grain rice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just cook it and you can toss it in a salad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Really yummy.
Yeah, and it's also a great source of protein. It has a lot higher protein content than something like rice. So great alternative.
Yeah, and delicious.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, and filling too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, absolutely. It's protein and fiber. Those are very, beneficial nutrients to include in our meals to help keep us feeling fuller for longer and stabilizing blood sugars. And unfortunately, with most of the foods people are choosing, fast food, these convenience, refined processed foods, they lack the protein, they lack the fiber, they lack all of the nutrients that are going to keep us satiated And unfortunately, this is why we're constantly going to the pantry or the refrigerator looking for the snack every 20 minutes because we're not feeling that sense of fulfillment.
Right. Yeah, it's really it's criminal.
Yeah.
The stuff that the bad food that's subsidized instead of the healthy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. A friend and I we took a road trip last week and we went to Tucson and we self-prepared our meals ahead of time and literally brought everything that we needed. It wasn't a lot of work. It wasn't a lot of, it took up a lot of space. It was very, quick, easy meals that we were able to just heat up or eat cold. And we did not have to eat out one time over the entire 4 days that we were gone. Came back, had almost no waste left. We literally went through, I think we had maybe 4 apples still left over and like a half a bag of raw almonds. But that was it. And it was so rewarding to bring back our glass containers that we had everything stored in. We did overnight oats. We did
Oh, yum.
yeah. I mean, just really easy. We did lentils and rice. We had another kind of like a Mexican dish with some ground beef and a bunch of vegetables and rice and some homemade seasoning. And it was just really rewarding sitting there eating our food out of our glass containers, knowing that we weren't pumping a bunch of chemicals into our body that, also polluting the earth. It felt really rewarding,
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I mean, it's a much nicer way to eat.
It is. But so many people are intimidated because they just don't have any experience. They don't know where to get started. So, you mentioned that you have a cookbook. So can you tell the audience a little bit about your cookbook and how this came to life?
Oh, sure. Well, so I started my blog in 2014. Mary Catherine started hers, my daughter, in 2011. And yeah, then I started mine in 2014 and I thought, well, like maybe one day it'll be a book. I work in publishing, so
Okay.
that had always been in the back of my mind. I
Okay.
want a book too. So I do a lot of fermentation, which is very simple. It can sound intimidating and people are always worried, oh, I'm going to make myself sick or poison my
Mhm.
family, but
Mhm.
it's very safe because the good bacteria crowd out any bad bacteria that get into the food. And
Mhm.
bad bacteria can't survive in the acidic environment of fermented food. So when I started all of this, I started fermenting more. I had always made yogurt, but I didn't
Okay.
realize what I was doing. I didn't
Mhm.
realize I was fermenting milk. I just knew if I heated up milk and took yogurt from a previous batch and put it in, the next
Mhm.
day I'd have more yogurt.
Hmm.
So
That sounds too easy.
no, I know.
Wait, say
No,
what?
yeah, you take milk and you heat it up. It's in my book. You heat it up to, I think it's, I don't know exactly the temperature, but
That's
until
okay.
it's just about bubbling around the edge of the pan. You don't want to scald the milk.
Okay.
So and I forget what temperature that is when you do that. But anyway, you do that, you turn off the heat
Mhm.
and you let it cool a little bit. And then you add a bit of yogurt from the previous batch. You stir it up and
Mhm.
just put the pot. You can either keep it all in the pot or you can distribute it into jars,
Okay.
but put it in a warm spot overnight. So that could be your microwave with the door ajar. The light in
Okay.
the microwave will be warm enough.
Uh-huh.
And then the next day you have yogurt.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So for somebody who's never made yogurt before and they're listening to this and they're like, you know what? Maybe I'll give this a try. Do they go and purchase some sort of yogurt from the grocery store that they bring home to get started? How do
Yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah. Yep,
Okay.
you need yogurt. It's like you need money to make money.
Yeah.
You need yogurt to make yogurt.
Okay. So
So
is
you
there
do need
Is there a particular brand or a type of yogurt that they should be looking for to ensure as clean as possible as a starter?
Yeah. Get a good quality fat yogurt.
The
Don't
full
get low
fat,
fat.
grass
Yeah, get
fed,
full fat. Yeah. If you can find full fat grass fed, get
plain.
really plain. Don't get fruit bottom.
People
Don't
don't
try it with fruit
realize
bottom.
people do not realize how terrible store-bought yogurt is for them, when they're buying the little Dannon and Yoplait. It's literally just chemicals and sugar and some food dyes mixed into this little plastic container.
Yeah. As a dietitian, you must just shudder when you walk through a grocery store. I
Well,
don't know how.
it's funny because I just had a conversation with a group of individuals yesterday, and they asked me, they said, what do you think about the grocery store? And I said, to be perfectly honest with you, the grocery store is terrible. You don't find much at the grocery store that is actually good for you. So I'm really big advocate for trying to shop local, shop, farmers
Yep.
markets.
Mhm.
And then from there, supplement with what I can't find at either a local butcher or the farmer's market or whatnot. But yeah, there's not much in the grocery store that is actually good for you. And people don't realize that these food manufacturers, they're paying the grocery stores to place their products very intentionally to entice the consumer to pick it up and put it in their cart. And more often than less, the more name brand something is, the more their brand recognition, the higher the sugar, the higher the salt. These are not things that are necessarily good for us. So I always encourage shop generic, look at the generic versions of things,
Mm.
because they tend to be a little bit better. But yes, I do shudder. It's like, it's a challenge. So let me ask you this. Do you use animals? Like, do you cook with eggs? And I know you mentioned yogurt, but do you use other animal products as well?
Yeah, I mean, technically I'm an omnivore,
Okay.
but I don't eat much meat. And I'm just a very picky omnivore.
Okay.
So if I could get meat from rotationally grazed animals that stay on one farm,
Mm-hmm.
and have one bad day,
Mm-hmm.
I will eat that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to find. Eggs, yeah, absolutely eat eggs. I get them at the farmer's market, and
Same.
I pay through the nose, and I'm happy to do so because those are happy hens.
Yeah. So
They're
can I
not.
ask you what is the cost for the eggs that you get at the farmer's market? I typically pay $14.99, I believe, for a 30 pack of the farm
Oh,
raised.
30. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
Everything is very expensive here, so keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, so mine are a little bit more. What you said, you get 30?
Yeah, 30 for $14.99. So I'm in Southern California. I'm on the opposite end of you. And
Oh, okay.
most of the eggs are coming from the Central Valley areas where a lot of the farmers come down and
Oh,
set
okay.
up the markets.
Yeah, they're $10 a dozen.
Okay. All right. So I think
So
ours
it's
are like
similar.
$7.99 a dozen or $8.99. It's pretty
Yeah,
comparable.
it depends. So there's this one booth I love to go to, but they no longer go to the farmer's market I usually shop at. They're at
Okay.
another one that I go to less often. So
Okay.
they stopped going to the one here where I live just because of the parking situation.
Okay.
Anyway, their eggs are so nice. They're $8 a dozen. You crack them open and they're orange.
Oh, isn't it beautiful?
The yolk is orange. Yeah.
The flavor, I mean, just
Yep.
everything about it, knowing how nutritionally dense that egg is. I personally am a huge advocate for eggs. When I did my graduate program, I did a whole research project on eggs because eggs had been so villainized over the last many decades. And I was like, I'm just not buying this. There's got to be some sort of propaganda behind all of these
Mm,
recommendations, and naturally the cereal, we won't name all of the big manufacturers, but they kind of villainized and made consumers think that
wow.
eating their breakfast of eggs and bacon was problematic. And we can look back at our earlier generations, our grandparents and our mothers and fathers, and these were the staples that they grew up on, and we didn't have the prevalence of diabetes and cardiovascular disease and metabolic syndrome and obesity and all of the things. But once we transitioned to breakfast cereals and pancakes and toaster strudels and Pop Tarts and
Yeah,
instant oatmeal, oh
right.
gee.
Just pasty, highly processed carbs.
Exactly. Exactly. So back to the listener who's kind of interested, and we've really piqued their, curiosity around sustainability and where they can start taking some responsibility for themselves, not only improving their health, but also reducing their grocery bill, which with
Yeah,
inflation is just
that's
outrageous.
true. That's true. I
So
mean, yeah.
it's crazy. So, what are some tips that you can give to the listeners on how to get started with reducing their waste, being more sustainable, not only for their own budget and their own homes, but also contributing to the environment in a positive way?
Well, I would say start small. Don't think you're going to overhaul your entire lifestyle overnight. You'll just go crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
that won't be fun. It'll be very frustrating. So start with the easy stuff. So if you buy bottled water,
Mm-hmm.
just stop buying bottled water. You're
Mm-hmm.
paying a huge premium for filtered tap water. The plastic bottles shed microplastic into the water, so you're
Mm-hmm.
consuming more microplastic. So that something like that would be an easy switch. If you drink soda, try to drink more water
Mm-hmm.
instead of soda. Really, make water your drink of choice would be that would cut all kinds of packaging. It would improve your health and you'd save a small fortune. I mean,
Absolutely.
if you're a big soda drinker
Yeah.
or sports drinks or whatever, or even that hint water,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so much plastic packaging. If you want, take a lemon and squeeze it into your water,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll have
Absolutely.
actual real lemon in there, and it will cost nothing. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's a simple one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe make water your drink of choice.
Absolutely. And the reality is that most of the population is dehydrated because they are
Mm.
consuming, coffee and energy drinks and soda. These beverages are diuretics, and many of them have additional added sugar, which is another diuretic. And so most of the population is pretty darn dehydrated. They confuse their dehydration thinking that it's actually hunger. And so it's just
Mm.
contributing to a really, unfortunate negative feedback loop, keeping the body out of its natural rhythm. So I agree with you. I think water is a great place to start. My recommendation for individuals is to try and get their hands on mountain spring water if possible. Take your glass jugs up. I know,
Mm.
you're near Mount Shasta, isn't too far from you. You've got access to fabulous mountain water that is absolutely delicious and naturally contains all 200 of those minerals that our body is dependent upon, that we're not getting from our foods due to soil deterioration and mostly filtered tap water being drank. So we're in desperate need.
Mm. Oh, great. Yeah, I've had last time I went to Yosemite. This is pre-COVID a while ago. I
Mm-hmm.
had filtered water right out of this lake where we
Ooh,
were.
that's
Yeah, yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
very
Yeah, you can
cool.
buy like a little pump thing, and my friend had one, and yeah.
Do you do a lot of camping?
No,
No.
uh, I'd like to. When my daughter gets back from university, my younger daughter, in the spring, I know she'd love to go camping, so maybe we can do that this summer.
Yeah, I'd love to be a little fly on the wall and see what your camping setup and preparation, especially around cooking the meal, would look like.
Oh yeah. Well, gee, it just takes extra planning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last time, one thing I do when I do go camping, before I go, I fill my stainless steel bowls with water
Mm-hmm.
and make giant ice cubes for my cooler. And the big
Oh,
giant ice cubes, they stay cold longer. They take
yeah.
a lot longer to melt,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have to buy those plastic bags of ice.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. That's a
Yeah.
fabulous tip. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
you just
that.
have to think ahead.
Yeah.
Start it, I don't know, like a week before you go,
Mhm.
because it'll take a couple of days for the ice to freeze, but
Love it. I love it. Such a great tip. That is fabulous. So, besides your cookbook, what are some other fabulous favorite resources you have for the listener to get started on their sustainable zero waste journey?
sustainable zero waste journey. Yeah, let's see. I mean, there are tons of them out there.
So, for you,
Um,
well, then let's simplify this. For
okay.
your kitchen, for you
Mhm.
specifically, what are 5 absolute necessities that every individual needs to get started on their journey?
Okay. You need one good knife.
One good knife.
Yeah, to chop vegetables. You don't need a big, huge, fancy set of knives.
Mhm.
Just one good chef's knife. That's a must. And you need a cutting board.
Mhm.
I'd get a wooden one, wood or bamboo or something, just not plastic.
Yeah.
Avoid the plastic.
Yes.
Yeah, gotta have those. Lots of jars.
Jars. So jars are something that could potentially be recycled out of the convenient foods that they're maybe utilizing right now,
Sure.
like the spaghetti sauce or,
Yep.
the pickles or whatever that
Yep.
might be. So just starting to hoard those
Oh yeah,
and
start to hoard those.
Mhm.
Um, I freeze food in jars. I
So do
use
I.
wide mouth jars. So
Mhm.
last week I made a giant vat of soup. It
Uh-huh.
was the end of the week and I thought, oh, I better use these vegetables up. I made a big vat and I thought, okay, um, you know, we I don't mind eating it over and over and over.
I'm
But
the same way. I'm
yeah.
the same way. I have zero issues with making 3 to 4 different options throughout a week and eating the same thing over and over. Typically it's 2 to 3 if I'm being very honest. So usually it's more like 2 to 3 variations and just rotating those out throughout the week until they're gone. And sometimes by the end of the week, maybe there's 1 or 2 servings of something and I'm just like, I'm kind of over it. I will take that and put that into a glass jar and then throw it in the freezer for later times when I just need
Well,
something
yeah.
quick.
Yeah, and then now, so I made this giant vat of soup. I have 3 jars in the freezer now.
That's
So
fabulous.
if I'm really tired, I can just
Yeah.
pull that out. So, but yeah, jars and for fermenting food and
Mhm.
for just when you're out and about, it's nice
Mhm.
to have a jar in your bag. You can put your compost in it,
Mhm.
or I don't know, if you forget your water bottle, you can drink water out of a jar.
Abs-
And then I just posted on my blog this morning. The post is something like 13 tips for plastic free gardening on the cheap. I think that was it.
Nice.
So I grew some kale outside and I was so excited because it was coming along and had all these leaves on it. Looked so good. And the leaves were maybe like getting an inch long. And I went out one morning and they were all gone, all the leaves, just these little stumps. Something ate them all. Um, but they still had a little bit of growth coming out of the bottom. So I put glass jars over them to
Ah.
protect them from the cold and from whatever ate them.
Mhm.
And now they're doing really well. Now I have some kale doing really well and some parsley doing really well. I have one little broccoli um, coming up. So anyway, I put jars over them. So I found another use for jars.
That's fabulous.
So you've got to have lots of jars in
I
the
love
kitchen.
that. So we've got knives, we've got a cutting board, preferably wood, jars. Give us two more things.
Two more things that you can't live without. What do I use all the time in my kitchen?
What's that thing you showed us earlier that was sitting next to you?
Oh, yeah. Cloth produce bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing super high tech. Now, the great thing with these two, when I buy greens at the farmer's market and I bring them home, if I don't do anything with them, then the next day they're going to be kind of limp.
Right.
So what I do when I get them home is I cut them up into kind of big, not quite bite-sized pieces, although I could do bite-sized pieces, but I'm in a hurry. So I just kind of chop them smaller and I wash them and I put them in a bag, a clean bag, and I take it outside and I twirl it around and it wicks away the water.
I love that.
And then I put that in my crisper and it's just like having bagged greens.
I love that.
You just reach in and you take them out and they stay fresh for a really long time. So these, and you can use a bag like this for, I don't know, packing a sandwich, not a juicy sandwich.
Yeah.
But like a cheese sandwich or something.
Right.
Anyway, so I use, and for storing, I have a loaf of sourdough bread in the freezer right now, a whole loaf frozen in a cloth bag.
Okay.
Sourdough freezes really well whole.
Okay.
I don't cut it up because if I use plastic, it would be fine, but I don't want to use plastic.
Yeah.
So I've got 4 now. Fifth thing I can't live without in my kitchen. You don't have to have a kitchen scale, although if you're going to do some serious baking for sourdough, it is nice. That's a nice to have. It's not a must have.
Yeah.
A nice set of stainless steel mixing bowls or glass mixing bowls. Yeah, I use those all the time.
I think those are some great tips. Fabulous tips, and all of them are universal. It doesn't require a lot of financial commitment to purchasing a few really good quality tools that are going to last a really, really long time. I still have my original cutting knife that I purchased when I started my, pursuit to become a dietitian and took my first food science class. And I still have that knife, and it's been decades now, and, just sharpen it every once in a while and it's good to go.
Well, that's great. Yeah. It's worth it to spend a little bit of money on a good tool that will last.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has been such a pleasure to have an opportunity to chat with you this afternoon and really, pick your brain and kind of get some ideas going on how we can be more sustainable and reduce our waste in the kitchen, because it is such a prevalent problem. We can all be doing better. So how can the audience find you?
Well, my website is zerowastechef.com with zero spelled out. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Zero Waste Chef. So those are the main places. I have a newsletter also, but you can sign up for that through my website if you want to do that. And I think that's everything. It feels like I have a bunch of plates spinning.
Yeah.
those are the main ones.
Okay. So anything new? Do you have anything new coming up that you're excited to be working on?
Well, in January, for the whole month, I wrote a newsletter a day. It was 30 days of climate action.
Ooh.
And so it gave, you can get to that through my blog. It's a Substack newsletter. And that was great. It was exhausting. Writing a newsletter every day. And I refer back to them all the time, because I referred back to one in today's blog post, and I read it and thought, how did I write something like one of these every day? Because, but anyway, I was just like possessed.
Yeah.
I would roll out of bed in the morning and I would just start writing.
It's amazing when you're passionate about something where, you know, the drive and the energy comes from to create that and turn it into something that others can utilize for their own benefit. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's something that will be alive forever. It will be there waiting for, you know, future generations to come to utilize and take advantage of. I have mad respect for you, lady. I think that what you're doing is so important. You truly are an inspiration. You inspire me. I love following you and just seeing all of your tips and all of your tricks. I think that what you have to offer the world is a beautiful gift, and everyone would benefit from just heading over and, you know, checking out your website or following you on one of the social media outlets, because what you're doing is important work, and it's the way of the future if we want to be around for future generations.
Well, thanks, Heather.
Thanks for joining us on the Think Yourself Healthy podcast. Make sure you leave a review and let me know what you think. I love reading your feedback. Come hang out with me on Instagram at Heather Duranja, and don't forget to take a screenshot that you're listening to the podcast and tag me. I love to share it. See you on the next episode.